Welcome back to State and Local Government and Politics, Module 4, Key Actors in the Policy Process, Part 6, Government Structures and the Policy Process. Parliamentary and separation of powers governments, the former exemplified by most European countries and the latter by the United States, are the two principal forms of democratic governance in the post-industrial countries. A member of the majority party in a separation of powers government can vote against the wishes of her or his own party and not fear having to run for re-election because the government has fallen. In a parliamentary system, in contrast, the consequence of such a dissenting vote could well be the failure of the sitting government and the need for calling an election. A parliamentary style system is a common legislative form using the integration of powers where the legislative branch chooses the prime minister or president. The leader of the majority party or head of the coalition becomes prime minister or head of government. The prime minister selects other leading party members to become government ministers, blurring the line between executive and legislative branches of government. The prime minister and other ministers must all be members of parliament. This political system is typically referred to as featuring integration of powers. This characteristic of blurring across executive and legislative branches in the parliamentary systems clearly differs from the American state constitutions that establish three separate, distinct, and co-equal branches of government. Effects of this clear separation of powers include that the legislative process is much more predictable in the parliamentary system, since it is based primarily on the majority rule principle as opposed to the checks and balances logic of American constitutional law. In addition to these structural arrangements, there's also a tradition-based system of collective responsibility, whereby members of parliament nearly always vote along party lines. You don't see anywhere near the level of vote swapping or shifting coalitions in parliamentary systems, as is commonly witnessed in American state governments. In terms of elections, parliamentary systems make voting decisions relatively simple. Parties run on a set of promises, sometimes referred to as a manifesto or a mandate, which will become the official set of policies for the new government if elected. Separation of power systems, in contrast, can be quite complicated and confusing for voters, since there are multiple officials to select, for example, governors, upper and lower legislative house members, and other state-level officials, judicial offices, and ballot initiatives. Candidates for partisan offices often run personalized campaigns in broker-type parties and are not necessarily representative of established party platforms. Once elected, the voting behavior of such candidates can be rather unpredictable as well. In Part 7, we'll review the policy models.